Our students are very keen on tackling climate change head on. I feel like a community like this, Passivhaus community, makes me feel very optimistic about the future.
Yeah. Welcome to the Passivhaus podcast, brought to you by Passivhaus Accelerator, a catalyst for zero carbon building. For news, inspiration, and connections from all flavours of Passivhaus, check out passivhausaccelerator.com. Sign up to receive regular updates about events, get your questions answered, and contribute to the community dialogue. There's loads of free information for experienced professionals and people just starting out on their Passivhaus journey. We hope to see you at one of our weekly Passivhaus Accelerator live webinars. In the meantime, here's this week's Passivhaus podcast. Welcome back to the Passivhaus podcast. I'm Matthew Cutler, coming to you from Auckland in New Zealand, and I'm joined again this week by Jay Fox. How you going, Jay?
Great to see you again. How are things in New Zealand?
Getting warm. It's we've had a couple of pretty warm days here, and it has been very hot in Australia, which is usually a sign for us that it's about to get warm because we get what they had, but we get it a couple of days later. But yeah, the prediction is it's going to be a pretty warm, possibly dry summer, but it may also be very humid. Yeah, things are hotting up.
All right. Well, hopefully it doesn't get too dry because that's never good.
No, no. How about in your part of the world?
Well, we've been worried that it would be kind of the dry season when it gets to be, winter, just because we still have a lot of debris left over from the hurricane. And the concern is that if that dries out, it becomes fuel. Luckily, we've had a fairly wet winter so far, and hopefully that continues so we don't have to deal with any wildfires. We had a few at the very end of last year, but so far it seems like we're gonna hopefully avoid that.
Awesome. All right, we've got another interview this week from my time in Belfast, Ireland, and this is a panel discussion with a few people, which we'll get into shortly. But before we do that, I just want to do a big shout out to all of our supporters over at the Passivhaus Accelerator. Firstly, I'd like to thank our stakeholder partner, NYSERDA, and also our founding sponsors, 475, Ingui Architecture, Partel, Rockwool, and Zola. Thanks also to our champion sponsors, Boiso, Cascadia Windows and Doors, European Architectural Supply, Facro, Icon, Intelligent Membranes, LG, and Source 2050. And a big special thanks to the sponsor of the week for this week, which is Lamelux. Great to have your support. All right. Earlier this year, I had the great privilege of going to the Passivhaus conference in Belfast. It was a joint Passivhaus conference between Passivhaus Trust UK and the Passivhaus Ireland Association. And as part of that, I got the chance to visit a building that was under construction at Queen's University. This is right in the middle of Belfast, and this is a student accommodation block. And as I comment in this conversation, it was a really great opportunity to go and visit a building that was halfway through construction, and all of the people that were on the tour, the Passivhaus people that had this special tour of this building, we were very excited because that meant that we got to see the insulation panels that were being stacked up and assembled. We got to see the windows in various states of being installed, and how that all went together, and how the builders and architects figured that out, some of the details on site. We got to talk about the air tightness membrane, and we got to see the ventilation system going in, the ducting, and how that was being set up, and all the other systems. And a lot of that is invisible once a building is finished. So this was a really fantastic opportunity to see that. And that was a part of the site tour of the conference. And I had the chance to sit down with Nathan Campbell, who's the estates manager of Queen's University. So he was responsible for that project. I also, in this panel discussion, was talking with Marie Fallon, who's the co-director of the Passivhaus Trust and is also an associate director of Archetype based in the UK. And then Caroline Ashe Brady, who's one of the amazing team putting stuff together for she was heavily involved in the conference. She has been the chair and is heavily involved in Passivhaus Association of Ireland. And she is also a director at Core Insulation. And we've talked about Core on the pod before. They do some fantastic work around Ireland as well. So really great lineup. So let's dive in. This is my panel conversation with Caroline, Anne-Marie, and Nathan.
So I'm Caroline Ashe Brady,
Yep.
and I am the chair of the Passivhaus Association of Ireland. It's a volunteer role, and I'm also director for the core group.
Yep, great. And you opened the proceedings today?
I did indeed, yes, I had the pleasure. It was fantastic, yeah.
Yeah, we'll come back to that because it'd be good to talk about kind of where things are at and why we're here really in Belfast. Anne-Marie, tell us who you are and where you're from.
So, yeah, my name's Marie Fallon. I'm a co-director at the Passivhaus Trust, and I've also worked with Archetype for the last decade in the UK, delivering Passivhaus projects. And I'm also on the board for BEST, in Scotland, and the innovation hub there for sustainable design as well.
Great. So, and you're based in
Based in England, yeah.
Yeah.
Based in England, yeah.
All right. And you also have Nathan. How are you?
I'm well, yes.
And tell us where your role is.
So I am work for Queen's University Belfast in the Estates Directorate.
Yeah.
I'm an estate manager, sustainable construction.
Yeah.
So I look at net zero guidance policy and try and steer direction for where the university go on their construction related net zero pathway.
Yeah. Great. Oh, well, thank you all. So Caroline, let's start with you.
Cool.
I guess tell us why we're here. Why Belfast for this conference? And just to clarify, is this the first combined conference?
Yeah.
Passivhaus Trust.
Yeah, so this is the first combined conference. Yeah, so I think the initial conversations started a couple of years ago with the chair before me, Dr. Barry McCarran, and he had started talking about with the Passivhaus Trust about a visit to Belfast, and then through Barry and through further conversations with myself, we discussed the option of us joining forces to do that, and I think we brought the local knowledge. It's still within the UK, but having the two islands combined together and all that's happening in Belfast and all the projects, and it's a leading light in many ways. It was the perfect place to come.
Yeah. I've heard a lot about really good stuff going on in Scotland, or about to maybe go on in Scotland in terms of the code. But just before we come on to that, is there a lot going on in Ireland, in Passivhaus?
Yes, a huge amount. It's funny when you're looking at the island of Ireland, it's more on the commercial side in Northern Ireland and residential in the Republic of Ireland. So we've seen Kieran Home opening the conference here this morning with us, and they have plans for over 3,000 Passivhaus units. We have Ballymore construction here today as well. Ballymore are building passive single dwellings in Portmarnock, and so we're seeing our larger scale contractors, or tier ones in particular, taking the model here and building. Yeah, there's so many of them now.
And what do you think is driving it?
I think that ultimately what is driving all of these things is the need for reliable carbon data. I think that's one of the major drivers. And then when you work back from that, so when a target is set and it needs to be science-based and we need to be able to back it up, I think people in the industry have gotten to a point where they see that Passivhaus offers them that solution, and then they delve into it, and then they see so much more.
Yep.
They also have their targets around operational carbon and embodied carbon, and particularly for the Republic, that's coming from European legislation. And when they look into what they're doing, about 40 to 45% of their operational carbon is accounted for in operational carbon, and 45% in embodied carbon.
Yeah.
So again, they have to report on that, and science-based targets. That's the move, I think.
You and the minister this morning made that very clear about the fact that buildings do contribute quite a lot,
Yes.
and therefore can make quite a big difference.
Yeah.
So he said that there are some binding commitments now in Ireland for emissions reductions.
Yes. So, well, I can speak to the Republic. There are commitments have come in through legislation for Europe, in which the construction industry is going to have targets specifically related to operational carbon and embodied carbon. And the minister up Northern Ireland, he spoke of it this morning, that the same is happening here in Northern Ireland. So it's been driven now by policy.
Yeah.
And that's shifting the dial in a big way.
Yeah.
I think what it's doing is it's going to bring those in the industry that aren't looking at it into the space.
Yeah.
And it's because everybody in the next few years is going to be looking for these solutions.
Yeah, absolutely. That's exciting. Well, speaking of policy, I've heard a lot about Scotland.
Yes.
Because there's been talk about essentially adapting Passivhaus or something close to Passivhaus as code. Is that happening?
So the Passivhaus equivalent is what they're looking at adapting alongside their normal building standards. So last summer we had a really successful stage 1 consultation round with the process that they go through in Scotland to develop into new standards. And this year we're just starting off again with kind of round 2 of that, where last year was around the general premise of bringing in revised targets and looking at betterment and improvement and how that would work alongside their already existing processes and regulations.
Yeah.
And the consultation that's just about, I believe, to kind of be commenced again now is around what that energy metric is and what the kind of modelling methodologies that are acceptable can be. And so, the idea is that 2026 to 2028, that there's a kind of a gradual introduction of energy metrics that will bring people down essentially to a Passivhaus equivalency in relation to building compliance. So really exciting. But I think in Scotland, the precursor for all of that is the Scottish Futures Trust, the infrastructure arm of Scottish Government, which we also heard about this morning from Stephen Long, where they created a basis to improve indoor air quality and build quality in the school estate through outcomes-based funding. So over a 25-year period, local authorities will draw down the capital funding for the project. They fund it up front themselves first, and Scottish Government will pay them back over that period if they maintain the building according to a number of conditions, one of which is the energy target, others indoor air quality, learning and teaching, digitalisation, etc. And that's been a game changer. And as we saw this morning, there's 47 projects that have gone through that learning and estate investment programme. So 47 projects that are getting outcomes funded based on performance, and 18 of those are certified Passivhaus, with about another 10 kind of working towards close to Passivhaus. So almost over half of the projects are being delivered and have been delivered at the moment. And so
that seems like a very sensible and progressive policy of actually focusing on that operational or rewarding operational efficiency instead of just throwing money at upfront cost. Do you know if that's been done anywhere else, or is England looking at that, or
to my knowledge, no. I know there's been certain sectors in England that have had, the Department of Education in England, for example, just have quite an interest in how they've managed to do this in Scotland, but there hasn't been any necessarily same uptake. So in England, for example, we have a lot of initiatives, say if I just talk about the education estate, looking towards net zero and their own net zero kind of approach, which relies a little bit more on offsetting rather than setting a kind of demand reduction target. There is a demand reduction kind of range of targets, but it's not quite the same. I think the great initiative that's come out of England and Wales and Scotland in the last couple of years has been the UK net zero carbon building standard, which again was a kind of industry-led standard, as opposed to, and as again, some policies are referring to it, but we don't have it in any compulsory capacity yet, unfortunately. But I think people are listening, and there's pilot projects being run through at the moment, and a lot of feedback and lessons learned coming out of that process. Yeah.
And the Archetype's been a leader in the space of education, doing passive house for schools for a long time.
Yes.
Has anyone looked at the benefits, the health and productivity benefits, that learning outcomes of those?
So we have a really compelling study completed by one of our colleagues, Carissa Thua, who has completed her PhD in association with Archetype and UCL in London around the health and indoor environment of passive house schools. And I think one of the really many compelling evidence research that's come out of her work is that a bio-based passive house school environment has 60% less hazardous compound build-up in the learning and teaching environment than a business as usual school, for with the performance gap and all of that. So and a lot of other links to how we look at compound chemical risk of VOCs in materials and that kind of thing, and just how attainment is much more approved in those buildings, as well as the filtered air from outside, and how actually natural ventilation doesn't always give you the best indoor air quality.
Right.
So some really compelling findings that we hope we can promote more next year in a bit of a campaign.
Is anyone looking at students' outcomes and learning outcomes?
So we have a lot of qualitative feedback about student attention and attainment, from the kind of teaching profession. And BISRIA have a set of monitoring protocol that look at productivity and kind of health and kind of satisfaction, feelings of satisfaction at work. So it is very benchmarkable, and we are undertaking a series of those as well, and going back historically to some schools to get further feedback.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, you're also looking after the students.
Yes.
Nathan. Tell us about why Queen's. Well, for those that haven't been here, Queen's doing an amazing project for student accommodation. Largest passive house project.
Yeah, we're using that phrase. Largest passive house project on the student accommodation project. We have to be everyone. It's that passive house envy we were talking about.
Yeah, that's what I say.
I don't think
I'm the best.
people like having a slogan. So no, yes, we. I guess the decision was made from the start, but it was touch and go as to whether that project is going to go passive house. So we're thrilled that it is. We sort of it's a rental. It's a student rental accommodation. Any running cost savings on that building, Queens are going to benefit from. So there is a financial incentive to doing that, but also we're getting a really good quality building, and our students are getting a better indoor environment to live in. So why we did it, I guess it was the right thing to do. The financials sort of stacked up in the business case, and we need to do one. We needed to do for once. We may as well jump
to make it the most.
Were there any challenges in convincing? I imagine a lot of people had to be convinced.
Yes.
Were there some hurdles there?
So Queens, we would sort of talk about it like a small town. So you imagine there's lots of different departments, and there's I guess there's politics like any large organisation. So yeah, whatever morally we think is right, maybe from the sustainability team, or maybe from a estates planning point of view, or doing the right thing, it needs to stack up financially in the business case. We need to show value for money, and we need to show that we're getting the best outcome. And obviously students are central to the university, so we have to do the best for them. So yes, there was a lot of hurdles, we can put it like that. So a formal business case for any project that comes through for any of our capital works projects would be required. And that was developed to sort of demonstrate passive house was really good value for money for the university. And had all these other benefits.
So where to from there? I mean, you still got to finish that project, but where to after that one for Queens?
So I guess before wider rollout to university estate, and we're trying to share lessons, and we're getting a lot of knowledge from the community as well. We've got a couple of, so that's our pathway project, or it's our first project, so we're learning a lot from it. We need to decide if it's something that Queens want to bring forward. We already know we do want to bring Passive House forward, but I mean maybe for other elements of embody carbon targets and things.
Yeah.
We've got an Enerfit project in I think it's a Victorian terrace. Up around there, there's 3 terraces. A lot of our estate is domestic scale actually, and we try and fit a university activities in around it. So
yeah. Does that have heritage?
Absolutely.
Issues?
Yeah, and I'm trying to think of that. At Mitchell Institute, we I'm not sure. I think that one might be a listed building, but
Yeah.
we've hundreds of listed buildings on the estate, and there's, even if it's not listed, it'll be in a conservation area.
Yeah.
So there's planning implications. So
Yeah.
first Enerfit, first Passivhaus certified are the key ones, and then we'll sort of
Jump it in there.
you have to go for it.
Yeah. Well, Belfast is obviously it's a bit of a there's a lot of pride there in terms of the Queens is obviously quite a significant part of Belfast, and it's it's right slap bang in the middle and can make a big influence. So I think it's going to have, you guys must be pretty excited about having that.
It's amazing.
Happening in Ireland.
It's amazing. And then, as you say, in the city centre,
Yeah.
and along the street, and the students living there, and gosh, yeah. You couldn't, if you were to design a project, you design that, or the opportunity. Yeah.
So Caroline, how are you feeling about the future? You told a pretty compelling story about your 9-year-old this morning, and having to explain what his life might look like. How are you feeling about the future?
Look, I'm an eternal optimist. It's why I'm involved in all of these things. Sometimes people will be, they'll say, you can't just sit back, you have to try and change the dial. So my part of the future in the built environment, climate change is a major issue. I also think, though, we have an opportunity to build more resilient buildings into the future, and we do have to start thinking about what the future looks like, because it's not okay for our buildings to perform today.
Yeah.
I think that we've got to start modelling what our buildings will look like 10, 15, 20 years from now. That's another challenge. Maybe it's a step too far right now for the industry just to be designing for where we are today. So I just think, I think I've gotten the golden era as chair of the Passivhaus Association because it's been 20 years before me. And all the work that's gone behind, and I come and it's like projects popping up out of the ground all over the place, amazing projects. So and I think the industry is shifting to a place where when I retire from the construction industry, I'm going to go, God, we're good.
Yeah,
we're
nice.
good.
Nice.
Yeah, that's
Anne-Marie, how are you feeling about the future?
Yeah, I mean, I'm usually slightly kind of on the fence sometimes with these things. So optimistic, but also I think there's a lot of opportunity to overcome the barriers on the ground, and I think that's kind of my kind of mantle with the Passivhaus Trust and the Passivhaus Association of Ireland, is to try and bring that more mainstream and try and bring those lessons learned to greater audiences and reach out to different parts of the construction industry. But for me, I think it's really satisfying to see clients recognising the quality the Passivhaus brings and the kind of underwriting it brings to their long-term assets, particularly like in Nathan's case, but also just to have comfortable homes that are really a joy to be in. And when they need to be buildings that are really well loved and archetyped. With my archetype hat on, we've been very lucky that many of our buildings, they have such great outreach and have led the way for many others. And that's, I think we can building on that. That's where the optimistic bit is for me. Yeah.
And you, again, like we mentioned, you're looking after a bunch of students. How are you feeling about the future?
Our students are very keen on tackling climate change head on. I feel like a community like this, Passivhaus community, makes me feel very optimistic about the future.
Yeah.
But I know it's going to be a real struggle.
Yeah.
I'd love to see, carrot and stick. We've got industry bodies coming to the fore with the UK net zero carbon building standard, but we also want to see regulation catch up.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
And those that aren't, maybe stepping forward and pushing that, if they came forward as well through regulation and it's more enforced, shall we say, that would be really good, and it would progress things even faster. So that needs to catch up, but I'm cautiously optimistic with it.
Hey, well, thank you all. Any closing thoughts on yesterday? It was great tour, fantastic from my point of view. But from what you've had today, the last couple of days, more conference in general, any thoughts, comments?
I think the part for me is learning. And so we have over 600 people at the conference today, either online or in the room. And the fact that I don't know how many people responded to Slido, but it's like we saw that 25% of those people are coming to learn.
Yeah.
They're from the, so that's like 150 people,
Yeah.
you know, if we're doing the maths, and like they're new.
Yeah.
And if maybe they'll be next year and they'll be the ones that have started and we'll have 150 new more people in the room leaning in to learn. So that's the great best thing about this. Also, the Passivhaus community, I define it as open source.
Yeah.
Like it is this
A lot of sharing.
there's so much sharing.
Yeah.
It's incredible. There's no so that's what I'm really excited about, this group of people.
Well, I think the Passivhaus community has always been pretty open to talking about where they've made mistakes as well, sharing of successes, but also laying everything out in the open. It's very positive. Learning. Yeah. Anything for you?
Just I think the next big thing, the thing we're already tackling is retrofit and how we safely retrofit buildings. You know, we've seen the scandals and the failures in the UK with the external wall insulation at the various different failures with the quality assurance that's out there at the moment. Can Passivhaus and the NFIT standard bring a more robust process that people can can respond to and kind of bring quality assurance to that retrofit market? It is a big challenge because you're talking about mainstreaming and bringing that high quality to millions and millions of homes and buildings. But that's, I think, the decarbonisation and retrofit kind of pathway is the next big thing. And we see some inroads on that already. And
there's huge stuff going on in London.
Yeah, there is. Yeah,
both new build and
retrofit. Yeah, definitely.
Which is really exciting because there isn't the policy driver there necessarily, is there? No. So that's coming from councils.
It's coming from also the fact that, you know, as we move through the next few decades, as Caroline referred to, if a newer building isn't going to be of a reasonable efficiency to run and perform, it's going to devalue.
Yeah.
You could have insurance or investment fund issues, you know, so once the finance markets, and they are kicking over this, I think there's going to be real traction to make genuine from that financial viability point of view over a building's lifespan. So that's kind of what's exciting for me. You know, how can we move into that zone and support?
Well, I think it was Thomas that said yesterday, it's, you know, you can convince architects and engineers, that's the easy part, but you got to convince the accountant. And if they're starting to get it from that usability point of view, the cost of operation, then everything starts to fall into place.
And Caroline mentioned it earlier about, you know, resilience. You know, if we can't insure our buildings because they overheat or they're subject to flood risk, you know, or they're just not suitable because they fail because the quality's poor. I mean, you know, we can't have that type of breakdown, you know, and the insurance companies are looking at that and looking at mitigation and how we can avoid having void insurance in future decades, you know, and that's the risk that people will take by not refurbishing.
Nathan, I was thinking, I'm a really big fan of mid-build open homes and opening up a home halfway through construction, which is essentially what you did yesterday. Because that's when you can see all the exciting stuff, the important stuff. Because when the building is complete, ventilation, the air tightness, that's kind of all invisible. So really fantastic to have that site open yesterday.
We weren't sure. I sort of put it. I think we talked about it with the Passivhaus Trust, and we're like, well, sure, the building's not finished. Why would you want to come? But then that's the whole point. It's like, absolutely,
into the engine.
Yeah, totally. Potentially a health and safety nightmare for that.
Absolutely, yes.
You okay on that?
A lot of stress for the contractor, but
great, really, really valuable. So I really appreciate that. I guess the other takeaway, coming back to your opening comments, is you always hear about communicating to 9-year-olds or thinking about the way we communicate, and that's what I was thinking about when you spoke this morning. I think that's a lesson that we could all try and not dumb down, because 9-year-olds are smart, but simplify the messaging and not overcomplicate it and just say it like it is.
Yeah, and you've got to make it personal.
And make a personal story.
Yeah, it's a personal story, how it'll impact everybody. I think the Passivhaus community is phenomenal at science And I
Yeah.
think it's only catching up with communication.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I would
Yes.
agree.
Yeah.
And I think even the four of us standing around this table, and we're all really effective communicators. Like, woo! That's
Yeah.
like,
Well, then
it
it's-
is communication now. That's the we have all the tools in our arsenal. It feels like we're very close, and now there's a drum we have to beat.
And it's going mainstream, so
Yeah.
we're going to have to do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
When's your TV into?
It's 5:00.
And that was Marie Fallon, Caroline Ashe Brady, and Nathan Campbell coming to you from the Passivhaus conference in Belfast. What do you think, Jay?
Really great episode. I really do appreciate Anne-Marie's knowledge and just I feel like every time I hear from her, it's always exciting because she's coming from Scotland and talking
Yeah.
about where things, good things are happening, which,
Yep.
some of us not so lucky. But I was really, always pleasantly surprised by to hear how things are going and that policy with the Scottish schools. And that what were she said of the 47 projects that are being funded through that program, 18 have actually hit Passive House certification, and others are close. And that's just really excellent news. And I wish that there were, states or jurisdictions over here that might copy that policy.
Yeah. I mean, that was a big part of the reason why I wanted to go to the conference, because it wasn't an international conference this year. That's going to be in 2026, and I've really enjoyed going to some of the fierce conferences in the US, but this was a great chance to see, because I know that there are things going on in Scotland with their moving towards a building code, which is basically a passive house equivalent, which is going to be amazing. It's similar to, well, I guess the closest equivalent is Massachusetts, and a code there that's getting very, very close to the passive house standard. And the thing that's really, really interesting about the Scottish example is the collaboration that's been going on, the advocacy work that Anne-Marie and others have been involved in, and Sarah Lewis at the Passive House Trust as well, all the way through that journey, and educating people, talking to ministers, talking to policy people, and just really just chipping away at that over a period of time. It's definitely not an overnight thing. Sometimes it seems to happen quickly, but then there's a lot of delays and one step forward, one step back, and that sort of thing. So it's been a long process, but it is really exciting to see. And then in Ireland, it's also, I was really interested to see on the ground what was happening there, and this experience of getting to go to Queen's University was just incredible, because they've gone from not really having any passive house, or very little, other than single standalone homes in Belfast, to this really impressive, quite challenging, but quite impactful project right in the middle of the what is essentially a university city.
And that actually brings up with I didn't note who said this, but that Passive House has kind of seen an increase in adoption in when it comes to commercial buildings in Northern Ireland, and in the Republic, it's more residential.
Yeah.
Which is that, I mean, did you get to kind of tour around both sides of the island and actually see that, or were you mostly just in Belfast?
I got the chance to stay in the UK for a few days before going to Ireland, and that was really interesting seeing. At the time, I wondered, were they sort of what 200-year-old? Turns out the house I was staying in was probably more like 400 years old, and seeing the reality of what that's like, in terms of it not really having any foundations. It's basically flagstones on the ground with stone walls that are uninsulated, but really fancy windows, because the windows have been updated. So you've got these really new modern PVC tilt-turn windows in a lot of cases, or just really nice windows in this really old stone building that's eventually got more and more airtight as people have closed up the old fireplaces and installed gas boilers, radiators. But yeah, so that was really interesting. But on the new side, I also did get to see a couple of passive house projects that from people that we have talked to and featured on the podcast as well, in and around the UK. In Somerset, there's a council housing development that was going all for passive house. That was a Stonewater development. And yeah, so there was some really cool stuff. And I did hear about one of the largest building companies in London, which is making a commitment to going to Passive House. And there are a lot of people were talking about that because this particular building company is one of the largest, and they're not necessarily known for high quality in terms of performance. They're sort of just a really big volume builder, provider of large scale housing, and they've recently made this commitment to, if not certifying, then at least going pretty close to Passive House. So there's definitely pockets that I found of real movement and a commitment to going to a much higher level of performance. So yeah, that was generally really positive.
That's great. I wish we were seeing more of that here, because I think, and this is again borrowing from a point that Anne Marie made, just about how if you can't insure these buildings, or if they're not comfortable, they're going to lose value. So I mean, there's a real financial incentive that maybe isn't immediate, but is going to become more apparent as the climate crisis worsens, and it's kind of better
Yeah,
to be an early adopter.
yeah. I mean, I had a couple of surprises from just looking around at some of the housing. One of them was the reliance on gas. A lot of people, heavily reliant on gas. They tend to have water heated boilers for radiators, and the engine that's driving all that in most instances, like 95%, is natural gas. So there's a very low adoption at this point in heat pumps or mini split systems. That's starting to change, but that's only about 5% of the residential market has heat pumps at the moment. And the other surprise was those older homes that I was talking about, those 300-400-year-old houses that are gradually becoming more airtight as people replace the windows and fix up holes. They're not necessarily replacing them with adding into ventilation. And I found that quite interesting, because you've also got people using gas boilers, which typically are inside, which also has risks of things like carbon monoxide as a byproduct of incomplete combustion of a gas boiler. So the friends and family that I stayed with actually have carbon monoxide monitors inside their home, in case there's a problem with the gas boiler. So I found it quite surprising that there's not a bigger emphasis on good mechanical ventilation. I think that will also be coming as there's more of a move to electrification of homes, because getting off gas is it's also a sort of a national security and fuel poverty issue, as it is in a lot of places. And I guess the final point is an increasing awareness of overheating and houses getting too warm. And one of the reasons why I think that houses typically have boilers and not heat pumps is because air conditioning has never been really needed. But that's starting to change. And I think that'll be one of the drivers of people considering moving to heat pumps instead of radiators, because they're starting to need them in summertime as well as needing the warmth in the winter.
And I've heard a similar thing in New England, where it just was not, in Maine or Massachusetts, it was just never, air conditioning was maybe a luxury that you would need a few days out of the year, and now it's become increasingly necessary, which I think that I read a report not long ago that New England was warming faster than other parts of the US. And I think that might actually have kind of kickstarted that movement to use more heat pumps up in those regions, particularly Maine.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep, definitely a trend that we're seeing, and probably going to keep talking about more and more.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, fantastic to be able to go and visit these places and see what's going on there, see some of the similarities and also some of the differences, and where they're moving ahead and what we can learn from. So big thanks to everyone that welcomed me there, and also another thanks to the team at ProClima and Ecological Building Systems, who we featured last week, who helped me get over there to cover that conference. That's it for this week with another episode of the Passivhaus podcast.